As always, it is my pleasure that you join me for today's podcast of Second Chance Coaching. My name is Dr. Richard Lewis. If you'd be so kind as to leave me a rating and your feedback, I would very much appreciate it, and it will help others like you to optimally discover this podcast wherever you listen to this and your other favorite podcast. As you know, at Second Chance Coaching, we focus on seeing everyday life through the eyes of the returning citizen and highlighting the resiliency of the human spirit. I would love to work with you one-on-one, whether you're a returning citizen or coaching client seeking your second chance, or you're a representative of a business, college, or university seeking to integrate and support returning citizens in your respective organizational and learning environments. Please feel free to contact me via email at richard@secondchancecoaching.com or via Instagram at the Dr. Richard Lewis. Welcome again to another edition of Second Chance Coaching. As always, it is my pleasure to join you on another week of your reentry journey from whichever corner of the world you're listening from. We always remain humbled and excited that you've decided to spend part of your week with us. It is always a special part of the week that comes around when you decide to spend the time with us. So we thank you for that. As always, I want to continue to shout out our Second Chance family worldwide. As we have started season number 6, we've received a lot of love from the United Kingdom and Australia. Thank you for your support as always. Here stateside, I think my students have started listening to the podcast, even though I told them you're not getting extra credit. You know, that's for your own personal development and whatever enjoyment you get out of the podcast. But I think because of their listening, Florida has once again become the highest listening state for the podcast since we started season 6. Speaking of the students, you know, the beginning part of our term continues to go well. I've kept myself organized, stayed committed to that promise of organization and staying ahead of my work. It does make for a lot of work, but it keeps things from getting particularly chaotic. Even with the podcast, I record about 2 to 3 episodes at a time, so to just sort of put some episodes in the can and to stay on track. So, you know, it's been pretty good as far as taking care of that business. Now, let's see what's been going on lately. Recently, I had dinner with 2 college friends of mine. We went to a place called Blues Burgers in Hallandale Beach. So it's not only a place where you can eat, but it has also good music in the background. And a little pricey on the burgers. They're good. A little pricey, as a lot of things are right now. But it was good to really hang out with them and talk and chop it up and catch up with them. I also had the pleasure of always of seeing my son's godfather for a quick lunch. And, you know, we had a quick lunch when he was in town for about a day and a half. So it was good to really see him, you know, in that moment and us sharing a lot of laughs. I haven't shared with you lately the drama of As the Condo Turns. So let me give you a quick update with that. The relationship between us as a board continues to go well. By the time you hear this podcast, they probably will have known about the good news that our insurance is significantly lowered. So that's a big burden off of our back, at least for this year. But as it pertains to our relationship with our property manager, that continues to be the absolute worst. I'm convinced it's only a matter of time before we give him his 30-day notice and tell him to take a walk, or he might even get sick of us. You know, he might get sick of us holding him accountable all the time, and he decides to get rid of us. But either way, that's okay. In addition, I had a couple of strategy meetings this week at the college. One was with a colleague to prepare to apply for continuing contract, or as one would know better as academic tenure status. Even though I'm not up for tenure for a few years, or a couple of years really, it's really good to be prepared and be ahead of the game as far as what they need and what I need to get together as far as a portfolio is concerned. And like I said, I just want to stay organized and ahead of the game. In addition, as a faculty senate, we're also working on a pilot project which will make opportunities available to fellow faculty members to partake in supplemental positions in which they would serve as an additional academic advising support. They'd be like faculty counselors. But for the pilot, we specifically are going to be calling the title of faculty academic coaches. So the faculty academic coach would serve and support the advisor in working with high support or high need students to encourage and to foster academic success and persistence into the following semesters. Exciting things that we're doing. Definitely will keep you guys updated on these two projects. Now, when it comes to teaching, things are, like I said, things are going well with the students so far this term. I think one of the things that have helped me is I've tried a couple of new approaches with them this term. I've proactively tried to make sure that I become much more approachable with them and make them feel open that they could speak to me and try to really present a more gregarious side to me. But also, too, I am sticking by the book when it comes to their coursework and holding them accountable when it comes to that. There are instructors, and across either where I teach and other places, and even across all grade levels, there can be instructors who feel that if you are cool with the students or you really are relational with them, and you lean into having those building blocks of relationships with them, sometimes they feel like you sacrifice the ability to hold them accountable for their academic excellence. I certainly used to be one of those instructors, but now I've achieved a balance of really by simply laying out and telling them what the expectations are. Yes, we could laugh. Yes, we could have a good time in class. Yes, we could sit there and be connected and be relational. But on this end, it doesn't stop me from making sure that you're accountable for the academic excellence that you have to produce. So the students understand that, yes, we do this in class, but when it comes to your academic excellence, we're not going to compromise when it comes to that. And I think that if they know that, then it's smooth sailing for the most part. And knock on wood, so far it has been this term. Now, when I taught at Florida International University this past spring term, one of the methods of engagement, one of the things that I tried new with the students was to play music in the background while I was preparing for class. Specifically, jazz music, really with the objective of keeping them relaxed and not so nervous when it came to thinking what they were going to do in public speaking that day. I suppose that influence of utilizing music really influenced one of my students at FIU. And when we were doing informative speeches, she did her informative speech on music therapy. Her speech was an absolutely extraordinary speech, as I learned from my student that music therapy is really an evidence-based practice that utilizes music to address physical, emotional, cognitive, and even social needs, just to name a few. My student actually demonstrated in class for us how music therapy would be utilized to reduce pain using rhythmical breathing techniques. She demonstrated it on herself. She utilized it and demonstrated it with students who volunteered. I volunteered to do it, and she really walked us through the process of how you could focus on the steady beat of the music while taking slow, deep breaths. And with the music and the concentration of slow, deep breaths, it really fostered relaxation in one's mind and body. Through these exercises, she was able to demonstrate to us that this type of therapy has been shown to decrease anxiety levels, as well as one's heart rate and blood pressure, and even to reduce physical pain. When my student was giving her presentation, I thought so much how music has been such an influence, a healing mechanism, an inspirational tool, a distraction, food for my mind. It's so funny. So many of us do not go anywhere without our phones, and that could be because of our connections to social media, texting, watching videos, whatever. But I love having my phone with me because it's the source of where I store so much of my music. I think back when I was younger, think about when you were younger, how so many of our expressions and our shouting out loud and how we expressed ourselves was expressed through the music we listened to. As a young kid, I remember, and I could say any young kid that grew up in an urban setting always had their crew of boys that always wanted to be rappers, be the next famous rappers, and you always had a rap crew and always wanted to rap and sing and do all kinds of stuff. That's how music was. Music was just such an everyday part of our lives, especially as a teenager. Now, in the reentry journey, I did not consciously think about how impactful music was to me until I was remanded into custody. I remember looking back, I had gone weeks without listening to any music. And when I was first being transferred upstate, even though there was other inmates in the bus with me, it was a lonely, lonely trip going up north. And there was really nothing but quiet on that bus. You really had nothing but your thoughts and reminders of where you were. Because every time I moved my feet for circulation or scratched my nose, I would hear the movement of the chains around my waist, the shackles on my feet, and the handcuffs around my wrists. The deafening silence of nothingness, only to be interrupted, was there. And that nothingness was only interrupted by the occasional chatter and condescending laughter of correctional officers who were up front. Though that type of setting and that type of silence of nothingness and just listening to that condescending laughter really took a toll on my spirit. At one moment during that ride, I remember there was a car that was keeping up with us for a short time on the highway. Not intentionally. I think the car just happened to be keeping pace with us. And for some reason, this person was blasting the Backstreet Boys from his car. Now, I'm not a Backstreet Boys fan at all. So let me reiterate that. But at the moment, I just closed my eyes. And once again, certainly not a Backstreet Boys fan, but just the sound of that music, the sound of any music, mentally took me out of that bus for those moments. For those moments, my body was released from those shackles. The music touched my mind and touched my soul and really just lifted me up, even for just those few short moments. This was a feeling that could not be constrained by shackles or handcuffs. It couldn't be locked up and it would not be imprisoned. I'll never forget that. And that's when I realized that, wow, not being without music really had its effect on me. And listening to any music, even music like the Backstreet Boys that I wasn't a fan of, it touched me in that very moment. In my first few months of work release in New York, it wasn't the times that they are now. We didn't have smartphones then like we do have now. So I still had a CD Walkman and carrying numerous CDs in my bag that I would listen to. But I also had a radio Walkman where I listened to regular music, regular news, and it was just an everyday joy to have those mechanisms with me. Because in New York, you're spending so much time on the subway and the bus and just walking around. And then, you're going to work and going back and forth from home. I had to go to my aunt's house. I even had to go, I think I shared in previous podcast episodes, had to go to a group therapy group that I was just assigned to. It was just something that my PO decided to check off a box. I had to go to that group. But in all the time that I spent on my own doing all this commuting and going back and forth, it was so much easier to do because of the music that was my constant and consistent companion. And that music brought me to a place where it enabled me to reflect on my present day and let me reflect on what I wanted to do with the rest of my life when this immediate chapter of work release and parole was behind me. Now, during that time, the first summer in which I was home, the children and I did one of the things we would do every year. And that's when we would go to Sears department store and take annual portraits with one another. I don't know if Sears still does it. I don't think they even do that anymore. But on the way home from that photo session, we're in the car. I turn on the radio, and on comes the song A Children's Story by Slick Rick. The minute it came on, in unison between myself, Julian, and Nanamdi, we sang all the lyrics word for word. And when the song was over, there was so much joy and laughter in the car. The moment, the music, and the love all brought us so tight and together in that time. In the midst of the laughter, I asked the kids, where did they learn the lyrics for the song? And they reminded me it was me that taught them that. Listening to music, listening to that type of hip hop, listening to that music with me, it was through that they learned the song and the lyrics. In that moment, that was such a fun night. We went and got some ice cream too afterwards. That was such a fun night. And once again, it was a fun night, not only remembering the love, but the music which was woven to bind us together in that moment. I also think about when mom's health was failing. I remember there were times in the hospital or in the house where my sister and I would just sit with her together or sit with her separately, and without many words to say and not sure what would happen next, our companion was my mother's radio, and it would always be on the Haitian news and music station. And I remember there were times where my mother would close her eyes when music was playing, and I'm not sure if she was doing it, but I like to bet that I'm sure in those moments the music was being a soothing force for her, as it was really a soothing force for us too. After she passed away, I continued to leave that radio in her room, and I let that music play in her room for over a year. As for me, the music was a reminder of her, a reminder of her spirit, her love, and her presence that was staying with us. So it was amazing, and and the music and the Haitian music from that station is not something I normally listen to, but I got used to it. I loved it. I enjoyed it. I absorbed it, only because it was a constant reminder of my mother's spirit being in that room, being in that place. You know, Going back to my students' presentation, it not only included the demonstration, demonstrating music therapy techniques with us, but sharing with us and talking to us about the healing power of music, which I'm sure all of us could relate to. And she outlined some of these healing dynamics when it came to the healing power of music. Number one, we already talked about this too, pain relief. The pain could be relief from physical as well as emotional pain. Number two, an improved mood. The dopamine, those feelings of pleasure that are released by our body. The dopamine is released by us hearing about the music, because the music could help us recall memories, reduce agitation, lower stress, improve communication. And that lowering the stress could even be when you're doing homework. Even when I'm producing and composing this podcast, the stress could be lowered. Three, reduce anxiety, lowering the heart rates, lowering your blood pressure, and lowering your cortisol levels. So very important. Number four, improve, excuse me, improved brain function. Music has been documented to help stroke patients improve their motor and cognitive function, as well as jumpstart language development for people with speech challenges. And number five, emotional regulation. Music could help people connect with their emotions and improve their ability to regulate their emotions. It is the perfect solution to set the mood for using music to be your alarm clock so you're not as crabby in the morning. It could be the reflective formula of work while you're walking on the beach. It certainly could distract you from feeling how long the drive is when you're driving in the car, or it can reduce anxiety if you're scared to fly when you're flying on a plane. Music continues to be such an integral part of my life and my reentry journey. It's really as important as oxygen is to me. The soundtrack of my life has songs that remind me of when my parents passed away, when the Nambi passed away, when my children were born, when I traveled on long road trips, when I've fallen in love, when I had to, mend my own broken heart, when I graduated from school, celebrated different accomplishments, when my granddaughter, as well as the Wonder Twins, were born, and even when I hear a Backstreet Boys song, I think about how hearing that music allowed my mind to escape my physical restraints at that time. I even think of the music I will play when I'm cleaning my apartment and finishing my laundry after recording this podcast episode. So, welcome music. Don't sit there and turn music away. Music is such an important way for us to get through so much stuff, to support ourselves through so much stuff, and just to be a way to express, to live out loud. This music is, I can't wait to listen and turn on the radio once I finish this episode. But in the meantime, I want to thank you as always. Excuse me. Thank you for sharing your time with me. Thank you for continuing to spread Second Chance Coaching to your friends, family, and loved ones. Spread some music, spread some good music, share some music with your friends, family, and loved ones. That's a gift that always keeps giving. Thank you again. Once again, thank you again for joining us. I had such a good time as I always do. Hope you had a good time as well. And I look forward to spending some time with you again next week. Thank you again for joining us here at Second Chance Coaching. In addition to coaching services for individuals and businesses, I'm also available for speaking engagements and workshops on criminal justice reentry, human resources, as well as organizational culture and leadership. Feel free to email me at richard@secondchancecoaching.com, as well as connect with me on Instagram at @DrRichardLewis. Remember, every day you are given this opportunity for your second chance, and I know you'll make the best of it. I love you all, and I look forward to connecting with you next time here at Second Chance Coaching.